Good morning here from Los Angeles and soon to be in Palm Springs. Valerie Milano, the senior editor of the Hollywood Times and also Aspiring magazine. And I'm so glad and fortunate to have our guest here today. And I'm going to have her introduce herself. Thank you so much to be with us today.
It's my pleasure. My name is Holly Neer. I have been working in social change, art, music, culture since maybe 1971. And so it's been a really long and surprising and challenging career. And I look back and I wouldn't want to have it any other way.
Yay, Holly. Welcome back to Palm Springs soon. This weekend's Sunset Music and Comedy Festival is honoring you with the Legacy of Inspiration Award. How does it feel to be recognized for not just your music, but the movement that your music helped inspire?
Well, I've become of an age. I'm 76, and I think that's all of a sudden there is such a thing as a legacy. When you're actually living your life, I don't think I didn't think about legacy. I just thought about what I was doing in the moment in relationship to the movements and to the world. So it's quite lovely to all of a sudden have people acknowledging these what would it be, 50 plus years of singing for uh, not just not just for peace and justice, but for sanity. I think that the music that we created, I along with many others, was a heartbeat. It was a healing. It was a hand holding. And when you do concerts, for example, you get to be in that environment, say, with 900 other people. It's very life-changing and refueling. So, yes, I'm a singer-songwriter, but it has been much more than that for me. And I feel like I want to encourage next generation artists to dig deep and discover the pleasure of being part of a community. Um, there's nothing wrong with going to Broadway or being a movie star, and you can use power in a very different way that. But if you're an artist that decides to live and work within a community on it, you become um, I don't want to say minister because I don't mean to necessarily associate it with church, but and religion, but one becomes very connected to the heartbeat of a community. And the writing is inspired by what people do, and then the people are inspired by what the artist does. It's a very beautiful and tender relationship, and not always friendly. I mean, it has its challenges. We don't always like each other. We don't always agree with each other, but it's a fantastic way to live. And I kind of recommend it after all these years of 50 plus doing this. It doesn't have the fame and fortune of going for the big golden coin out
Yeah.
there, but it has a different life to it that I've really appreciated.
Well, as you've said, you've spent decades, you've been bridging the art and activism. Looking back, what moments do you feel best captured that balance between the microphone and the megaphone?
Hmm. Well, I was at the first Gay and Lesbian March in Washington. That was breathtaking. I went with my friend and then lover, Meg Christian, who actually was one of the artists, lesbian artists, that coined the phrase women's music. Um, it really was lesbian music in a lot of ways, but she wanted it to be open because not everybody at that time knew what their ultimate choices were going to be. And so she used women's music as a way of identifying music that comes through a woman's perspective. And so she and I were at that march together as sweethearts and just feeling so. I have a photo of her weeping, as we're watching the people move into the space and the speakers and the singers. And that was very in fact, falling in love with her was life-changing because I'm one of those women who didn't know I was a lesbian from the time I was 3 years old or something. I was, um, but I fell in love with a woman, and that changed everything. And I didn't come out of have a lifelong closeted relationship to being gay, but it changed my life falling in love with her, and it changed my music. She asked me one time, "Have you ever written a song just about a woman?" And I went, "Yeah." And I looked at the lyrics, and actually, there was always a patriarchal representation in it. There was a the law, or there was a boyfriend, or there was a political enemy of some kind. There was always a um, some sort of representation of patriarchy in it. And it challenged me to say, well, what would I write if I really just wrote about a woman? Whether that woman was myself. And I was very shy at the beginning. My first song was about my sister. I played it safe. And then later I was able to write about women loving women and women leading families and protecting their children as lesbians, which is a different task than if you're in a heterosexual environment. So it changed me, that moment. Another was, of course, when Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone were assassinated. Driving down, I was living up north, Northern California, and driving down to the events that were taking place spontaneously in the Castro, was the realization that I did not have a song in my toolkit that could speak to the intensity of that moment. And that's when I started writing the song Singing for Our Lives, which has now become an anthem in the global GLBTQ community. Who knew at the time? But it was that moment, that emotional moment. The first verse is, we are gay and we are gentle, angry people. I wanted to say we can be our most beautiful, tender, loving people, but we can also be filled with rage. And those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Saturday's event is called the Revival, Soul and Power. You'll be performing a tribute to women's music, which
Mhm.
has such deep roots in feminist and queer history. What does that term, women's music, mean to you today, and how has its purpose evolved?
Interesting question. I feel like we know more now than we knew then. So it just has the evolution of experience and knowledge. But I don't think we've arrived at a time where we don't need it. And sometimes people will say, "Oh, I remember back when I first this or that," as if it was a nostalgia. And I believe it's very important for us not to let our past become nostalgic. Yes, there's feelings of what it was like when we were young and when first in discovery, but the radicalism, the courage that it takes even today to be very clear about one's identity, one's gender, one's relationship to how the world perceives us. And we're living in a very negative, hostile time, and how to keep our sense of ourselves, our sense of our love alive is not nostalgic. It's very current. So when I think of women's music historically, I think back to the early 70s when we were beginning to articulate what it meant to be a lesbian, what it meant to be a female, what it meant to be gay parents, what it meant to be actually putting oneself in danger. And that continues to be true internationally in other countries. People can be stoned to death for being a lesbian, thrown off of a bridge, those days aren't over. I want to be part of that global consciousness about what it's like to be female in the world. Um, so it's changed in that it has 50 years of experience and knowledge behind it, but to me, it's not a thing of the past.
Yes. Well, the lineup includes incredible artists like
Isn't it fun? It's so good.
Yes, Lady Blackbird and of course comedian Vicky Shaw, each representing power through very different creative expressions. You've always been at the forefront of using music as a call to action. And as you were saying, in this current social and political climate, what role do you believe artists should play in creating change?
We are one of the ways in which a community, an audience, a world can see itself. We can give back to a group a mirror for them to say, let me tell you how wonderful you are. Let me show you how courageous you are. Let me articulate how much more we have to do in order to stay above water. So we become this creative reflection of, if we choose to, not all artists choose to do that, but if one chooses to say, how can I give back to whoever's listening and watching some sense of themselves so that instead of seeing themselves berated and punished and imprisoned and murdered, and all that negativity that comes at us from a larger system, we get this moment of relief where someone gives back to us our very best selves. And I think that's one of the most cherished parts of my job, is to think very clearly, and not to be Pollyanna about it. I
Mhm.
don't mince words. I talk about genocide. I talk about battering. I talk about uh, destruction, but in a way that doesn't say that's the end game. In a way that says, yes, we make it through this. We're not hiding from it. We're being very honest with ourselves of what the situation is, and we can rise to the occasion. We can help one another. We can survive.
Lovely. You know, many of today's younger musicians, especially queer and feminist voices, cite you as an influence.
Mhm.
Over the years, you've witnessed major cultural shifts, as we're talking about, from early feminist rallies to pride celebrations, like the Goddess Groove March. What do you see as the biggest triumphs and remaining challenges for gender and LGBTQ plus equality?
What are our greatest challenges? Is that,
Yes.
well, I think one would be to really acknowledge that we don't all agree on all things, and to develop an ability, a skill to work with people that with whom we are not in all agreement.
Mhm.
That's a lot of people want us all to think the same and feel like we can't work together unless we're all the same. And we'll never get anywhere that way. I do actually believe in a certain kind of separatism. Let's say, for example, a group like the early lesbian movement, we had to separate ourselves from men, from patriarchy. We had to separate ourselves from gay men and honor the word lesbian and say being a lesbian isn't quite the same as being a gay man. And even within the lesbian community, we're not all the same. So that separating in order to find out, how would I think if I didn't have that foot on my neck? And I don't think that's going away. I think we all have to separate enough to see how we think. But then we have to come back into some kind of a larger circle and bring the knowledge that we've developed of ourselves into the room, but not necessarily to always get what we want, and to also work with people who know they're not always going to get exactly what they want, that we are going to find some way to work together. I don't think it's easy. I don't think it gets easier with time. What does get easier is that I would venture to say there are a lot more men who understand why it's not just a gay movement, but it's a gay and lesbian movement. I think there's a lot more. Yeah, my concerts, I see fathers bringing their daughters. I see mothers bringing their sons. And we are trying to raise a generation of children that know more uh, about themselves than maybe we had the opportunity to. I don't know if that answers your question. It's such a huge
That's
question, isn't
lovely.
it?
That's lovely. You're leading Sunday's Goddess Groove March through the Palm Springs Pride Parade, and that is so, so special. I am also going to be in the Palm Springs Pride Parade. The city of Palm Springs has given me the honor of the Spirit of Stonewall Arts and Culture Award. And
Oh,
I am
congratulations. That's so great.
so excited to be there
Yes.
with you as well. because there's a
We
beautiful
can all
symmetry.
wave,
You're
you
gonna be
know.
waiting, yeah, having fun and representing. There's a beautiful symmetry between protest and parade, between defiance and joy. How do you personally stay connected to joy and community through your art?
Transformation. I'm always so happy to see someone in transformation. And I'm in a very nice position. People tell me that people will come up and say, I did this, I saw that, I felt this. And so I get to see. I remember an elderly couple coming backstage at one of my concerts, and I just think of them as being bundled, like it was like they had their coats, they hadn't taken their coats off. And they were about to disown their daughter because the only thing that man knew about in terms of lesbianism was dirty magazines he'd seen in the military of two women doing it with dildos for the pleasure of soldiers. I don't know. So he thought his daughter had gone off into a porn world when she moved to San Francisco. She said to them, I see that there's a concert coming to your town. Before you disown me, will you do me one favor? Will you go to that concert? Can you imagine how brave they had to be to go to a concert thinking they were going to a porn event? But they did. And they walked in, and there were hundreds of happy, polished-faced lesbians, all joyful, not a porn sight to be seen. And they came backstage and they just were undone by how they had totally misunderstood their daughter, and that this had been a hugely transformative evening for them. The journey was not over. These things don't happen. I mean, sometimes people say, well, I'm going to do about my parents. And I said, well, how long did it take you to come out? 7 years. Well, they get the same 7 years. We
Mhm.
don't change in a heartbeat. But those two people, that father and mother, always come to me as a symbol of transformation, but of also profound love that they would go through that in order to keep their daughter.
Mhm.
And I guess I feel that if we can hear stories like that and we can keep our hearts open like that, we can keep our courage together. So courageous right now, what people are having to do in order to resist kings, to see the demolishment. I mean, that White House wing being demolished to me was so symbolic of the desire to demolish democracy. And we all get born into a time, right? We don't know which time we're going to get born into. Well, this is ours. This is the one we've got. And maybe one isn't doesn't like to demonstrate or risk getting arrested, but then you can cook food for people, or you can raise money for people's legal fees, or there's a way in which we can all find, how do I know how to contribute to this? Because it's what the universe is asking for is, are we going to rise up and make sense of all of this and move it into a better place? Um, I think so. Not an easy challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as we start winding this wonderful interview down, when audiences leave the festival after hearing your songs and stories, um, what's next for you creatively or personally after the weekend of revival and recognition?
Well, I've had a lot of health issues. I've had two cancers and a stroke and cracked pelvis and, a variety of things. And so more time has had to go into that process, that healing process, than I had imagined. So I'm not going into these years with quite as much vigor as I thought, but it could all get better. And I, like all of us, we don't know if we're going to live another day or another 20 years. But I'm trying to find a blend of creativity, and there's a lot of new babies coming into my family that I really look forward to. Like in tribal life, we would sit in a rocking chair and rock the babies at my age. And I'm not quite ready to retire into being full-time in the rocking chair, but I certainly want some hours with that next generation to watch them. I have a 9-year-old granddaughter, and then there's these new babies. They To watch them discover the world and everything is a new lesson, and how at the end of the day, they might be sobbing because they've worked so hard.
Mhm.
These little kids are working so hard to learn. And as my mother used to say, children's work is to play. That's we have to make sure children get to play. That's where they learn. They don't have to necessarily get it in a classroom. And so I'm trying to spend more time watching what does learning look like? What does that discovery of every single little thing that comes along look and feel like? I want to know about that. I've also just finished writing a book, which of course it's not done by the time you finish writing it. Then there's editing and there's da 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 that goes on and picking photos and going through fact checking. But that was really important to me to try to document um, what I has happened through the eyes of a feminist artist. And then after that, I don't quite know what will come next. There's no shortage of possibilities, are there?
That's plenty, Holly. Yes, I cannot wait to meet you. We met virtually, so now we get to meet in person in
Yes, and
Palm Springs.
congratulations on your honors, and
Thank you.
be
And
wonderful to
thank
see
you.
the other artists that are coming
Yes,
to
for
town.
sure. And thank you to Sweet Baby J for the Sunset Music and Comedy Festival at Palm Springs Pride. We'll be putting in the story that I'm writing about how everyone can get tickets to the shows. And Holly, thank you again for your time and attention to our community and to our past and to our future. And
You're
you're a
most welcome.
pleasure.
I would just
Yes.
invite us all as we're coming to Palm Springs to think about how am I going to bring my very best self to this. The world needs to see us at our very best, and I look forward to being part of that.
Yes. We're the Hollywood Times today. The Hollywood Times official is our YouTube channel and aspiringmagazine.com. And we will see you real soon. Thank you again, Holly, for your time. I am so excited to get to meet you.
Thank you. Best
Okay.
wishes.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.